Yeah, even with a blindfold or in different time zones, could find my way to you with my eyes closed. There's nothing between us. Go to Mars and Venus, stand in front of every one of them rocks they slinging and be a shield.
Your shield. Yeah. In the fiercest battle, I'll defend you.
I'll defend you
from all these arrows, and the sword I will keep you from danger. Let me be your shield.
Let's go. Let me be your shield, let me be your shield. Let me be your shield, let me be your shield. Let me be your shield, let me be your shield.
The Taliban. Al-Qaeda.
Al-Qaeda. That's not Bush. Al-Qaeda.
That's it. Al-Qaeda.
You need to go back and watch some old SNL.
Yeah. Oh my God. Will Ferrell, the man.
Comme ça, heureusement pour moi, côté moyen va tomber. Mais gros tremblement de terre qui peut passer au cas là. Pour que tu te calmes.
7.2 earthquake hits Haiti. Look at this shot, dude. Holy cow. It said several dead, but it's actually over 300, I believe, now.
Yeah.
As of the time of editing this video, it's over 2,200. That's a crazy shot. Just millions of cinder blocks. But this shot, I mean, this is kind of just what Haiti looks like most of the time. And then a week later, of course, they get hit with a hurricane. I think I have footage. Oh no, this is the 2010 earthquake.
That's what,
Holy cow, look at this shot.
The quake struck just before dusk. Its power shook the densely populated capital, Port-au-Prince.
Looks like frickin' Armageddon, dude. Or like,
yeah,
there's like a bunch of dust in the air from everything falling down. There's just like a haze of dust.
Yeah, this is, incidentally, maybe we should show this to some libertarians. And, maybe just talk about the building codes. Maybe there is a purpose behind
building
them.
Codes.
Maybe, third world countries where you could just kind of throw up anything isn't the best way to go about things.
Free market.
Yeah,
baby.
I don't know. Free market. Let them people decide who they're going to hire to be their next contractor now that their building's been destroyed, their home's been destroyed.
Well, as you know, the Haitian people deserve this because they are cursed by God. They were cursed.
Yeah.
As everyone knows, you shouldn't rebel against your overlord. And here is...
Okay.
Pat Robertson will explain it to us here.
And
yeah, this is
Christy,
from Ephesians.
Something happened a long time ago in Haiti, and people may not want to talk about it. They were under the heel of the French, Napoleon the Third and whatever. And
whatever.
They got together
no
and swore
whatever.
to the devil.
whatever.
We will
burying them up to their necks and then putting molasses on them and then letting the ants eat them to death. Whatever.
You'll get us free from the French. It's a true story. And so the devil said, okay, it's a deal. And they kicked the French out. The Haitians revolted and got themselves free. But ever since, they have been cursed by one thing after the other, desperately poor. That island of Hispaniola is one island. Mm-hmm. It's cut down the middle. On the one side is Haiti, on the other side is the Dominican Republic. Yeah. Dominican Republic is prosperous, healthy, full of resorts, etc. Haiti is in desperate poverty. Same islands. They need to have, and we need to pray for them, a great turn.
He's right. The island is split in half, and the Dominican Republic is somewhat more successful.
Yeah. That woman seems so enraptured with what he was saying.
Oh, yeah. Look at her face, dude. Look at her face.
Yeah.
Look at this look on her face. She's like, what did I just hear? She's about to throw up.
Yeah, so that was like I was saying, it's Paul's letter to the Ephesians. It's slaves serve. It's called the Bible, James. Maybe you should read it.
I tried before.
There's the four Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Then there's a bunch of letters from Paul, and it says, "Slaves, serve your masters well, and serve your Christian masters especially well, because you'll get." I should probably
sound advice.
Yeah. Okay, slaves. Hang on, I don't want to leave. Servants, be obedient to them that are your masters. I didn't want to read the new version. We got to do the King James. Be obedient to them that are your masters according to the flesh, with fear and trembling and singleness of your heart unto Christ. And then I think the next verse, it's like, serve the Christian masters especially well. Please them while they are watching it, but as servants of Christ doing the will of God from your heart. Yeah, that's what happens when slaves revolt. God gets angry.
It's pretty good comparison to compare the Dominican Republic to Haiti, because they're both countries that the United States has been putting dictators in for decades, you know. And there was a successful slave revolt in Haiti, and there was an unsuccessful revolt. I know at least one attempted revolt that Che Guevara was involved in was unsuccessful. And the story goes that Che Guevara arrived on the island, and his MO is to go around to the working class, the peasants and whatnot, and get them to support the revolution. And the dictator of the Dominican Republic, in response to this, put a $10,000 bounty on the heads of any revolutionaries. So the peasants were bringing the heads of anybody that had a beard to the dictatorship to get the money. They killed vastly more people than actually arrived on the island. It was a couple hundred that arrived, and they were brought like over double that in scalps or heads.
Yeah,
pretty interesting.
It's hard. It's hard out there for a peasant.
It's the curse, man.
But I don't know. I really don't know much about Haitian history aside from just basically what you just talked about. You know, if they were a slave revolt or French colony. But I'm just wondering, did they have a different policy that we didn't? Why didn't the power of capitalism go in there and throw up resorts everywhere like it did Jamaica, the Dominican Republic, you know, the Bahamas, Cuba? That's kind of, you know, I mean, it doesn't really matter, but I guess it could if they had some
well, the problem is in Haiti,
governments.
They have a lot of people that have, you know, there's a long history of the peasants revolting, you know.
Like kind of anti-colonialist sentiment.
In order for United States companies to go in and buy up everything, all that stuff has to be available for purchase. And if a country nationalizes their resources, then U.S. companies can't do that. That's
I just wondered.
Yeah.
Oh, so I mean, I didn't know.
There's been a ton of revolts. There was a Democratic election. 2004 was the most recent coup. There was a left-wing president, Jean-Bertrand Aristide. He was thrown out by the U.S. military in 2004. He never finished his second term. Claimed he had been kidnapped. There was a coup. I mean, this has happened multiple times in Haiti. That's the problem. You got to serve your masters. How does it go? Serve your Christian masters?
Slaves, serve your masters well, and serve your Christian masters. Serve your Christian masters especially well, because you'll get part of their glory in heaven when you die. Or you'll be glorified through their grace, something along those lines.
The history of Haiti is interesting. There, you know, Toussaint Louverture was sort of credited with the success of the revolution. It wasn't just him, obviously, but and there was supposed to be this Danny Glover movie that never came out. But I did find, when I was looking for that movie, which never came out, it never got finished, there's this movie with Tony Robbins and this Tim Ballard guy. Do you know who this is?
I know Tony Robbins, the motivational speaker.
Right. I don't know what his role is in this film, but I'm going to have to watch this. But this is like, I think this guy's been on Rogan. He was ex-CIA or something like that, and he started this independent organization to try and free sex slave children or something like that. And I don't know why Tony Robbins is involved with this, but here's the trailer for it real quick.
never
They go to
dreamed
Haiti in this film.
that I would
and they
work
named the
in
film
Haiti.
Tucson. I don't know why.
I didn't know anything really about Haiti until I learned about a little boy
Name drop.
who was born in Utah, U.S. citizen, and was kidnapped in Haiti from his church, where his father was the pastor. I read about it in the local newspaper. I thought that I could make it into a U.S. case, and I couldn't because it wasn't. We had to leave our jobs. I had to leave my job because I just had to do something about it. We went to Haiti to look for his son.
Yeah, it's right here.
And we never found him.
Oh, wait. Let me play it till Tony Robbins.
People weren't talking about human trafficking like they are now. And really it's because of that work and efforts by organizations like Operation Underground Railroad.
It's a subject that nobody wants to think about or talk about. It's the worst part of humanity. And yet, we've got to do something about it.
Please get on the ground right now. Get on the ground. Get on the ground right now. Get on the ground. Put that down right on the ground.
Operation Underground Railroad. They're trying to go into these South American countries with this private militia and free sex slave children.
More power to them. I mean, if that's what the motivation is, sure, it's a violation of international law somehow. Probably in a dozen different ways, but
Seems like there could be more efficient uses of foreign aid. You know, maybe help to alter the living standard of the country a little bit.
Well, that's kind of the
Going
paradox.
guns blazing.
The paradox of foreign aid is that the countries receiving foreign aid that need it the most often have the most corrupt governments, to where none of the money goes to the people it's supposed to go to. You know,
Sure,
often
it happens all the
it's getting
time.
funneled
Yeah.
all the time. I mean, Afghanistan, the guys in charge there. But
This is the guy's website. I wanted to show this because this is a great photo. This is like the definition of the white savior trope. What are you going to do with the kid when he gets him? Is the kid?
Yeah.
Is he a U.S. citizen, or is he just going to deport him, or what?
he's just gonna carry him
Throw him
around
in a
like
cage.
that.
He's going to carry him around.
just like that, right there. Just carry him around,
Pet his head.
pet his head. Good kid. Yeah, he's basically just doing like a Daenerys role play, right? You know, Daenerys went to all the slaver cities and
Freed the slaves.
freed the slaves, and you know, with fire and blood.
Well, he's not freeing all of them. He's just freeing a few here and there. Well, I'm sure he's getting taxpayer contracts.
Oh,
Maybe he's doing good work.
yeah.
I don't know. Could be talking
Yeah.
out of my ass, but
Yeah, I don't know. Hopefully, I mean, it's a good cause. You know,
Sounds
whether
like
he's
it.
doing good. Yeah, whether he's doing good work or not. Kind of
seems like a grift. But that's just my.
Often these things they're just government farmers. Elon
Yeah.
Musk
Yeah, I agree.
just farming the government.
Well, fucking people think it's a joke. They cleared the block. I done called 911 3 times. They need to get Joe Biden on here, because this baby, it's awful. I'm not hurting nobody, Joe. I'm not pulling the trigger on this thing. I can't. There's no way for me to blow us up. Only you can, by shooting a bullet through my window. You're the only one that can do it, Joe.
What the heck? Kaboom!
I love this land. We got a few options here, Joe. You shoot me. There's 2.5 blocks going with me. And then you're talking about a revolution. The revolution's on.
So this is the D.C. bomber. He was out in front of the Library of Congress here with what he said was a bomb. I don't know if it is or not, if they ever determined that.
That bag that was on the dashboard looked like a bag of ammonium nitrate. So he probably got some homemade tannerite. I mean, that's.
I don't know. I just seen like keg, a small keg or something.
Yeah, right here. Hang on, go back. Right there, like right underneath the play. Yeah, that looks like tannerite. So, the stuff's legal to make. I used to buy it all the time. You buy ammonium nitrate. Well, I don't know if I should be saying this. It's legal. Ammonium nitrate and powdered aluminum.
Fertilizer. Yeah.
And you mix them together 10-to-1. And the only way you can set it off is you have to have like a high velocity rifle. But it does make a heck of a boom. Yeah, that's why he's saying the only way you can set it off is by shooting me. That's probably what it is. It's tannerite.
Supposedly he was diagnosed with schizophrenia previously. He doesn't sound that crazy. He just sounds like he's watched too much
sounds like
Facebook.
He sounds like, yeah, exactly. He sounds like I could throw a rock in whatever direction I go on that house. That's what that guy sounds like.
Oh, dude, I've heard dozens of people like that in my life.
Two of my 5 neighbors, I'm sure, would say that. Have said that exact same thing.
Definitely, dude.
Definitely.
He's live streaming this from Facebook, as that's what this video is. He's on Facebook streaming this live while he's doing it.
Yeah. How long ago was that?
This was a couple days ago.
A couple days ago?
Mm-hmm. August 19th.
I have been so checked out. I have not checked. What happened? Did he get shot?
No, he didn't get shot. He gave up eventually. They had him surrounded forever, and then eventually he gave up. Floyd Ray Roseberry of North Carolina was arrested.
Okay.
Said he was going on. Told his wife he was going on a fishing trip.
Yeah, and you know what? Just based on the information you've given me, I have no clue who he voted for last time for president.
No clue. That's not causation, ladies and gentlemen.
I could not make any guess as to which political affiliation or what
or how much Tucker Carlson he watches.
Exactly.
No idea.
I don't know. He's probably a Democracy Now! fan.
There's a
you can hear it in his voice. He loves Radio Lab. Yep. That's a Radio Lab fan.
He's probably got Radio Lab on the radio right now.
Right now. In his cell. You start espousing this shit and you
go down the rabbit hole. Like I went way down the rabbit hole.
Yeah. The whole Trump phenomenon. Just when you go out there and you allow this guy free reign to say this nonsense and not be pushed back on, you end up there's a lot of confused people out there. And confuse them towards other things. They're going to be confused. Don't put it towards the violent stuff. But, sorry, what was you going to say?
Well, I was just going to say, like, the way the algorithms, like, keep you in your own echo chamber, That could be the first political thing he's ever gotten into, and then that's all he's going to see in his feed,
Yeah.
He'll never see any contradicting information. I try to keep up on the robots, because they're taking over here. This is the LS-3 robotic pack mule, field testing by U.S. military.
What's that thing? This is the shoe tracker.
He's strapping this, like, square box to his boot. Like 3x3.
Why would you strap it to your boot?
It drops breadcrumbs for the robot to follow.
Essential, but it makes it track better.
I have no idea why they designed this thing this way, but it's maybe just for entertainment
purposes. Like you just have a radio transmitter,
Yeah, that would be... That's a good point. I didn't think about that. It could just follow your frickin' cell phone or something.
Yeah. Have a little thing in your pocket. No big deal.
It's probably about 8 feet long and maybe 4 feet tall.
Hi. That looks monstrous.
Sounds like it's gasoline powered as well, which is pretty interesting.
It is. Huh.
I don't know why they designed it this way, but that's pretty hilarious.
I guess it would have to be kind of
like a big old dog or something.
Well,
just to carry your bags around, you got to. This huge frickin' buffalo has to follow. This mechanical buffalo has to follow you around with a lawnmower engine on it.
Probably not advisable for stealth missions.
No, maybe not. Maybe not so much. And why is it stepping so many times? It doesn't have to step it's like constantly stepping.
Who's out there weed eating?
This thing's great.
3 in the morning? Oh no.
I do want one of these just to like annoy my neighbors.
Yeah, of course. I'd ride it.
Ride it up and down the street, yep.
Yeah, for sure.
Pretty silly. Central planning. That's what central planning gets you. The hippity hop buffalo robot.
His fans. Davido's verified status vanished after he tweeted in support of a strike by Nabisco workers. He wrote, "Support Nabisco workers striking for humane working hours, fair pay, outsourcing jobs. No contracts. No snacks."
This strike has been going on for almost a week now, I think. The Nabisco workers. There's a few locations that are striking. The few locations that are kind of left in the United States that haven't been to Mexico already. And Danny DeVito lost his Twitter checkmark for tweeting in support of the Nabisco strike.
No. Not Danny DeVito.
Well, I mean, it just...
So, it's kind of funny. I was listening to Kyle Kalinske recently, and it's some other plant, maybe Frito-Lay, one of them places, and there was this video put out by somebody advocating on behalf of the striking workers, and it goes into this guy. I don't remember exactly. I don't remember what the name was. I just remember he showed some clips, and they were talking about, and Kyle was talking about it, and he goes into just really run-of-the-mill stuff about the hours they make you work. You know, safety conditions aren't the best. When you do get hurt, they do everything they can to keep from having to pay your medical bills, and they just fight it and dispute it every step of the way. And Kyle seemed to think this was abnormal. And I just wonder how many other people out there.
You mean the conditions under which the workers have to operate?
He's telling me, like, I'm watching this guy talk about these horrible conditions. I'm thinking, yeah, that's what a factory is like. That's
almost every.
It's not Frito. Yeah,
unskilled position in the United States or entry-level position in the United States. You know.
Exactly. I mean, exactly. I'm sure it is.
Almost.
I know factories. I've worked in a lot of factories, and you're consistently having to work, 50, 60 hours a week.
Mandatory overtime.
As somebody that worked maintenance in some of those factories, I can tell you that most of that machinery is not that safe. You have all sorts of safety mechanisms bypassed, and it's somebody.
Do tell, Tony. Do tell.
And they tell us to do this. It's.
What was the company where that kid died from a Freon leak? What was that company? Do you remember that? There was this Freon leak, and it's odorless and stuff, and he died.
Yeah, probably happened dozens of times. There's I mentioned something about how I'd gotten hurt at work, got trapped in a conveyor and hurt myself. And it was less than a year, it was like 10 months after I left there, 10 months after my incident, there's a guy got caught 20 feet away from where I got caught and got killed.
Oh, shit. Holy cow.
I worked at Cosmos Cement 3 months after I left there. In this one particular tower there, after I got left, there was a guy that fell down an elevator shaft that opened incorrectly, and there was nothing there, and he got killed. So,
dude, when Trump came into office, he basically said we're not going to enforce OSHA. He basically said that with his nominations and whatnot.
Yeah,
it's great to have it, but if they're not going to enforce the laws anyway, you know what I mean? Fuck.
Yeah, that's the problem. The only time that OSHA comes in is if you have these places. They do somebody. They definitely. Them. Even if you call them, unless somebody dies there, OSHA's not coming there.
Really?
I know. I have not called them. I've known people that I know that they got a hold of them because I helped them. I gave anonymous in one particular incident. I gave an anonymous citation just that they had to send in with OSHA. Talked to other people who've done it, and I mean, for years on end, really egregious safety violations, and OSHA just doesn't show up. They just don't have the staffing. Right. They will show up to do an investigation if someone dies, but any injury.
Late then.
yeah, any injury, even some pretty horrible ones. Like I said, they never did a safety. I had my leg ripped apart, essentially, just crushed. They never come in. Well, the company covered it up.
Well, the thing about like the Frito-Lay strike and this Nabisco strike is this company made record profits in 2020, and they're cutting benefits. They're working mandatory overtime, and this strike in particular is probably not going to go well. They're probably going to shut this plant down and move to Mexico because they've already been doing this.
Yeah, and so you go to tell somebody,
you know. This guy's great. I don't know if you follow this channel, but
the factory workers at Nabisco are on strike right now for losing their overtime pay and having to work really long shifts. Their parent company is called Mondelez International. So I made a quote from the CEO of Mondelez International that says, "I don't care what it takes. I just want my goddamn cookies made." And I emailed it to Mondelez International. And I signed my name as Courtney Lee with the Coloradoan Times. And they emailed back and asked where I found that quote. And I said it was from a source close to Dirk. And then they said, just reiterating, this is fake and not on our website. If you don't mind, could we publish your email response as an official statement? This quote is fake and not on our website. We never said anything about the goddamn cookies. No, that quote is not something I said. You could quote, this is fake and has never been published on our website. Okay, thank you. For the record, goddamn cookies is not something I said. This is fake and has never been published on our website. This is still a misleading quote with things that were never said. You can quote, this is fake and has never been published on our website. Okay, thank you. Apologies for the goddamn cookies part. Then I emailed them a new quote from the CEO, Dirk.
This guy's a saint.
My name is
He's doing the
Jones,
Lord's work.
Digital reporter for CBS Akron. So you want to make cookies for a living? Well, you better be prepared to work 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. No excuses. People want their fucking cookies. They emailed back and said they can confirm it's fake, and they asked for a link or a source where I found this. Thank you. We were sent this exclusive audio.
I don't care what it takes. I just want these goddamn cookies made.
Thanks for sharing, Jacob. I can confirm this is absolutely fake. Let me know if there's anything else you need. Thank you. I need some goddamn cookies.
I love this guy. He's so good. Giving these freaking PR people something to do. They're just sitting around collecting a check.
Yeah.
Workers at the Nabisco
might be the best way to really to raise awareness about these things. Was kind of my gripe. You can make all the sob stories and Sarah McLachlan music set to terrible working conditions, but you get somebody out there trolling real well and make it funny. That certainly gets Reddit's attention and my attention.
It's just pathetic how much leverage workers don't have left, you know.
And it's not just the lack of support amongst people, or just how well the meme has penetrated the American consciousness that, well, if we raise pay, then prices are going to go up, or they're going to have to do this, or they're going to have to do that, and then you just point out the simple fact, no, this company's making a record profits. The only thing that would happen is not even that they don't make money, but that they just make slightly less money. They're still profitable. They're still doing well. And it's just, it doesn't, I've had this same conversation so many times, and it just does not sink in with people.
Well, you've pointed this out before, that it's not about the arguments or the facts, it's about feelings, you know. Because they're not even using, they don't bring up labor when these right-wing populists, as they call themselves, these Trump people or libertarians, they don't bring it up. They talk about trans issues or immigration as their big boogeyman at the moment, but they don't talk about labor because they don't support labor. They don't support workers at all. They don't support any policies to help workers. They try to pretend like shutting the borders down is going to help workers, and it's just not. That's ridiculous. When the companies are going to Mexico anyway, what's the point?
Or what they will talk about supporting workers, and they frame supporting workers as supporting businesses that are able to employ those workers. And it's just cute little, cute little, like, it's like a Mitch McConnell, Ted Cruz, just word salad of, yeah, I'm helping the workers by giving them jobs, by letting companies not pay them and not have safe working conditions.
Right.
So that
family
helps
values,
because it helps people to have, to make minimum wage in dangerous conditions. That's I guess then they're just going to go away if they have to pay more. Society can be structured
Nobody will
better.
pay 7 cents more for cookies.
Yeah. This was from some time back, and I don't have a citation obviously at hand, but somebody done the math. At the time, this is probably 10 years ago. At the time, if Walmart started paying all their employees a $15 minimum wage, just all the ones that make less than 15, bring them up to 15, and Walmart didn't touch their profits. All they would have to do is raise the average sale price by 40 cents. So
Right.
whether you go in there and buy $500 worth of stuff, or you go buy a $2 drink, just average price across the board, 40 cents increase, and everybody could have made 15 an hour.
Now, here's a secret they don't tell you. If workers made $15 an hour, they wouldn't all get the maximum allotment of food stamps, and they wouldn't be having that much tax dollars apportioned to them. That's how the taxpayers basically subsidize these companies and their low wages.
Yeah, I think I think it's messed up, but it feels like that's an argument that you could use against the conservative point. Like, hey, if you want to decrease reliance on welfare programs amongst the poor and needy, just support a minimum wage increase, and you're going to bring less people out of poverty, and less people are going to have to be dependent on these things. Now, I would think from a tactical position on the left, you maybe go along with that argument, but make sure you raise the bar on these welfare programs too, or at least hold them steady. But I'm just surprised that argument's not being made by someone on the right.
Well, like you've said before, even, and people like Sam Cedar will say that you just can't win an argument with someone that holds that political position. Like, there's no way you could ever convince him. Like, he feels like it's not even worth the effort, And you've said this too. Like, you can't debate somebody in that mindset, and it doesn't matter if you win the argument or not. They're not going to change their mind.
Yeah, it's just.
So what do you do? You just have to defeat them, right? I don't like putting it in that terminology because I don't necessarily agree with that position because, that's what I like to do is argue with these guys. But it is frustrating.
As sad as it is, this is an argument, I think, for politicians like Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi.
Centrists, you mean?
You have to have some politicians, those ingrained career politicians that know how to get in there and shake hands and grease palms and make promises to get things passed. And, you sacrifice idealism for pragmatism.
Sure. Well, with the current framework, you're probably right. But, ideally we could change the framework.
Ideally we could.
Politics.
Sure. I think that's not problem number one. In the meantime, you got to have those political animals to go in there and do it.
Polio is a horrible disease.
It's the last survivor with polio.
Period. Well, a lot of humanity knows nothing about polio, even though what it is.
It's in this iron lung. It's like it looks like a
Paul Alexander is a polio survivor who spends nearly all day, every day, inside his iron lung at home in Dallas, Texas. The disease paralyzed Paul from the neck down, so the machine helps him breathe by using negative pressure to force his body to take in air. He was only 6 years old when he caught polio in 1952, one of the worst outbreak years in U.S. history.
When I first contracted polio, I was just a kid like everybody else, but began to feel a little bit ill. When Mom saw my face, she knew.
Crazy.
What happens to their face? Can you see the polio on it? By the way, it looked like that machine was the same one he had in 1952.
Oh, this video is about how it gets refurbished and nobody knows how to work on it, so he had to hire an engineer. And he's like an accomplished lawyer, apparently. Here's some. I'm going to finish up the video clip because it's.
I'm assuming not a trial lawyer.
I don't know. I don't know.
They roll them in. Your Honor, These lascivious and licentious claims.
Dude, if you're arguing a case against this guy, you're fucked. Like, he's gonna get so much sympathy.
Well, yeah, okay.
It's a forgotten history. Polio is still a major concern in some developing countries. Some experts say it's possible a new polio epidemic could happen in the U.S. as more and more parents are opting out of immunizing their children.
And they're showing some news headlines here. Anti-vaccine groups blamed in Minnesota measles outbreak. Measles, Forbes. I guess it's just measles right now, but there is polio in like some African countries and whatnot.
My worst thought is that polio.
I guess polio paralyzes your whole body.
Those children in
You can't even breathe. He has to have this iron lung.
Pakistan or Nigeria or wherever. Polio is still happening. Somebody carried the virus. Would come to America and just infect.
This is my worst
One
nightmare
child.
right here, dude.
It only takes one child in life.
This is my worst nightmare, dude. Being, like, immobile.
Yeah, so something else. It was an interesting study that had come out. It was basically saying that these, I guess they're not really novel, but these kind of previously fought, knocked down, not eradicated, but close to diseases. Close to diseases were making a recurrence in the richest parts of America.
Sure.
You have these kind of yuppie parents that have lived nothing but blessed lives, and they think, oh, well, we don't have to get the vaccine. You know, my kid's gluten free.
Pay whatever to fix it when they.
And yeah, you know, and it's a weird one. It seems like it's crossing back over because prior to this, I think the anti-vax people that I knew were all, I would say, on the liberal end of the spectrum. They were kind of lefty, hippie types.
Interesting.
And
the crystal sort of community? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, not quite that far, but like the vegan, gluten-free, you know, all natural homeopathic medicine.
To some extent, yeah. There were some.
And it just kind of, it flip-flopped over to the right, I feel, pretty hard with this corona thing. So
I think it was taken advantage of. It's one of these issues, you know, it's like immigration or racism. It's like
of course it was.
People have these feelings, and you know, politicians are going to take advantage of those feelings for political gain. That's kind of what they do.
Yeah, 100%. This would have been something that there would have been a handful of different internet chats where it would have taken sway had it not been weaponized by Trump and some shady politicians and pundits who really just kind of set it off and gave it legs. And then, of course, the other pundits that want to constantly sensationalize and fight back against it, looking at you, CNN.
All right. Ron DeSantis, everyone's favorite governor.
2 in the arm, 2 in the belly, and that can be done much quicker. And so what you end up doing, you can see more patients if you have the option to do the sub-Q. And what they do is once they're done with the shots, they're observed for an hour, just like they would be with the IV, but then you can continue to move people in to be able to do it.
So he's anti-vax, but he's going around Florida touting monoclonal antibody treatments, and he has actually signed some sort of executive order that people in Florida can get this treatment for free, billed to their insurance or billed to the federal government if they don't have insurance, I guess. But it's free for every Floridian. Monoclonal antibody treatment, which has a reduction in severity of the virus by something like 70% if you catch it early. It's just, what do you think about this situation?
So, first off, I as we were just talking about, I wonder how serious Ron DeSantis is. If he uses this whole anti-vax, this whole thing as being just a political tool that he can use to mobilize the dumber parts of his base, or if he actually believes it. I would imagine, I'm sure he's got a degree. He's probably fairly accomplished,
He's
in
a smart
business
guy.
world. Yeah. So,
and he's not anti-vax explicitly. He sort of said that people should get it, but he'll, in the same speech, say that it's your right if you want to, sort of thing. That's what they're doing now.
yeah. I mean, I guess it's a good idea. It's probably, I'm assuming that this doesn't reduce the transmission rate, which is probably the more important thing.
It does somewhat, yeah. I mean,
It does? Okay.
This is what probably saved Trump's life. He got this after contracting COVID.
Well,
It is
good,
somewhat
good.
effective if you catch it early,
Yeah, so...
It's not as effective as the vaccine, not nearly. It's, like I said, it reduces the symptomology by something like 70%, whereas the vaccine reduction is like 99% or something.
So this is a half-hearted solution to a bad situation in which you've got a bunch of people that are anti-vax, don't want it. You have something that's not quite as good as it, and somebody that those people will believe come out and push for it and offer it for free. So
It's instead of a small intramuscular injection, it's a IV or 4 sub-Q shots. It's like
if that's what you want to do. I mean,
it's not called a vaccine though, so it's all good.
Yeah, well, you just call it whatever you want.
And it's literally antibodies. They're injecting lab-grown antibodies into you instead of your body producing its own antibodies. It's like, jeez.
People, the vaccine's not that bad.
It's like working around the stupid.
My arm was sore for a day.
You don't have.
I don't know.
You have the microchip, Tony.
I mean, I hear this beeping in my arm, but I assume that was always there.
The monoclonal antibodies don't have that.
They don't have the beeping?
Nope. All right. I wanted to talk a little economics. I think we should have a recurring segment on this because these are pretty simple issues that people don't really learn in school unless they go and do the independent research themselves.
Not on Facebook.
There's a few of these that they have greater implications for just humankind really, and some of these are philosophical, but they are also part of economic theory. And this week I had the prisoner's dilemma. This is the I'll set it up. So essentially, the prisoner's dilemma: 2 people are arrested, and they both were complicit in a crime. Now, if either one of them confesses, they get 10 years. If they both plead innocent, they both go free. But they're separated, right? And when they're interrogated, they're separated. So they don't know what the other person is going to plead. It's a scenario in which you are rewarded for cooperating, but you don't know if the other person is going to cooperate or not. And there's a whole British TV show based on this principle called Split or Steal. I don't know if you've seen this show, but it's pretty popular in England.
Oh, this sounds kind of like the reverse or inverse of game theory.
Let's watch a short clip of this here.
Balls in front of you, and they are the most important balls in the game. You will have one ball with the word split written on it, and you will have one ball with the word steal written on it, and you have to choose one or the other. You'll know which one you're choosing. If you both choose the split ball, you will split the money tonight, and you will go home with £23,625 each. If one of you decides to steal and the other decides to split, whoever has chosen the steal ball will go home with £47,250.
Oh, it's definitely steal. There's no way I'm not stealing.
Wait.
If you both decide to steal, you go home with nothing.
That's the prisoner's dilemma.
Okay.
So you have 2 balls in front of you. Both contestants have 2 balls. One ball says split and one ball says steal. If you decide to split and they decide to split, you split the prize. If you decide to steal and they decide to split, then you take the whole prize. Mm-hmm. But if you both decide to steal, nobody wins anything. This is the prisoner's dilemma, essentially.
Yeah, so this is kind of the opposite of game theory. What was that movie? Beautiful Mind. John Nash.
Right.
John Nash's game theory. If if everyone goes for the best thing for themselves, then everyone ends up blocking whatever the best outcome is. If you all go for the best outcome for yourself personally, everyone ends up blocking one another, and no one does well. But if you all go for the second best or go for the cooperative outcome,
sure,
everyone ends up winning. Having said that, I would definitely. I mean, this is all about manipulation. You just get in there, you make them trust you.
Well, in the game, they have to exactly. You try to make the other person trust you, and then you steal.
Yeah, like that the older lady, like she was doing that, like, oh,
I'm definitely gonna split.
I'm definitely, honey. Well, we could both just walk away with the money. F you.
Look, honey,
steal.
you have it on my word. We're going to split. That's how it usually goes.
Yeah, of course.
But it's called? There's the principle in economics is called the tragedy of the commons, and this sort of is used in economics to explain certain things that happen in society from an economic point of view. Let's see. It may be in everyone's collective advantage to conserve or reinvest in the propagation of a common pool, natural resource, in order to be able to continue consuming it. But each individual always has an incentive to instead consume as much as possible as quickly as possible, which then depletes the resource. Finding some way to cooperate would clearly make everyone better off here. And this is the tragedy of the commons. And the idea is, you have an incentive to use up a common resource as quickly as possible, because once it's gone, it's gone. So, and the problem with that situation is then the resource gets used up even more quickly because everybody partakes in this scenario, and they all try to use up the resource as quickly as possible. And and there's different areas.
Yeah,
of
so I'm thinking of the great toilet paper shortage of 2020.
Sure, you could
the tragedy. Of
everybody bought 10 times as much as they needed, and then the one guy who didn't have any. Yeah,
everyone, and the one guy that didn't, he just got some in 2 weeks, and he was fine because his 24-pack lasted for 2 weeks.
Right.
So, but yeah, it's an interesting. Oh my gosh, there's so many instances where that seems like it just applies to all the things that we kind of see in our daily life. I certainly feel I'm sure I could make some really good correlations between welfare programs. So let's say somebody making $50,000 a year, being upset because someone else, maybe this is a bad analogy, is a poorer person being on food stamps, and them feeling like this person is using up all my resources. I should have access to tax resources in this other form. I should get a bigger tax cut. And sure. They end up just fighting against each other and getting politicians in to push down the number of resources available for everybody. Whereas if they both supported one another, they said, hey, maybe he can get a tax cut and we can have good food stamps over here, or, healthy food stamp program, and everyone works better. It's not the best now.
Well, the one we usually talk about, you brought up, I think last week or the week before, is the tax cut. Raising taxes on the top 1% and then reinvesting in the economy is going to bring up the economy for everyone, and the top 1% is going to profit also, right? Mm-hmm. And this is a point you usually make. The fallacy of trickle-down economics, right? The tragedy of the commons is an economics problem in which every individual has an incentive to consume a resource, but at the expense of every other individual, with no way to exclude anyone from consuming. Generally, the resource of interest is easily available to all individuals without barriers, i.e. the commons. This leads to overconsumption and ultimately depletion of the common resource to everyone's detriment. And this is one of the reasons that we need government. This is exactly what results from, free markets. So the example I had in the doc is the fossil fuel industry, which is what's happening right now, right?
Okay.
So they know fossil fuel has a limited lifespan. It has to go or the earth is going to die. So basically what they're doing right now is going buck wild, building pipelines, drilling new wells, overproducing and stockpiling all the shit.
Yeah.
Because
all the oil companies, instead of getting out, pushing towards renewable resources now, they're all just in a standoff just to make as much money as possible.
Exactly.
As the Earth dies.
Exactly. Well, they know it's a limited lifespan, so they're going to take advantage of the resource at the expense of everyone else.
The rarer it gets, the more profitable it'll be.
So the goal of society should be to sort of find a ways to circumvent that, right? To have a common goal and implement that common goal through, democracy, preferably. You could also use fascism or something like that. But
anyone will work, really. Just anything but libertarianism. I'm just kind of curious about that sentiment in general. Like, what was the evolutionary basis of something like that? Why?
I wonder if this is the basis for men's, what would you say, promiscuity. It's a limited amount of wombs that can be full of children at any given time.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to monopolize those wombs with
you want to monopolize them while you have the opportunity.
Right.
And the bad thing is then you end up having to pay child support. That is no fun.
Well, I was thinking about the olden days. I wonder what the statistics are on split or steel. I'm sure someone's done this work. Out of 1.4 million games, players ended up splitting the pot 81% of the time. A heartening figure, given how easy it would be to not do that. 16% of remaining steel attempts were successful, while 3% failed. Damn, 16% of remaining steel attempts were successful. Interesting.
81, so... Yeah, so it's just a couple. See, that works in a population of 2. I think once you expand it out, like, what is it, Dunbar's number, the 150 people that you can really know in your life, and, you can kind of form a community with them and have social bonds with them, all that. But
right.
Once you start spreading out to society, there's all these people that aren't in your social group and you don't have any feeling like they're going to act in your interest. And so you're not going to act in their interest in return. And
right.
It's in no one's interest, but
I think that number's probably accurate. I think most people are good for the most part. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would say so.
I don't want to make a moral argument. This isn't a moral problem.
I think that most people don't intentionally act malicious. I think is the way I would put it.
This goes back to an old NPR, I think it was Radiolab, where they talk about side zoomers. You know what side zoomers are?
I do not.
Okay, so you're in traffic, you have to get off the exit, and there's only one lane where you can get off. But the middle lane is pretty empty, and you always have some assholes that'll zoom past everyone else to try to cut in at the last minute. Those are called side zoomers.
Obviously.
And the way the side zoomers rationalize it is, they'll rationalize it. They'll say, oh, the zipper method is more effective, and they have all these rationalizations of why what they're doing isn't wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But, most people just wait in line like everyone else, and they don't try to steal or cut the line.
It's probably, I would say it's most likely it's just a function of numbers. You get so many people, there's so many people on the highway.
Are you a side zoomer?
Well, I'm not, no. I'm the guy that waits way too long. I should do a little side zooming. I sit in the line forever, especially the exits at 264.
I'm the opposite. I'm like, I hope they try to cut in front of me, and I'll take up every fucking inch. I will not let him in for nothing, dude. I'll let him hit the damn concrete. That's me.
Oh, I'm not going to let him in, but I'm not going to zoom around anybody.
I will do my damnedest to make sure they don't get in.
If I'm it's a lot for me to have to follow rules. It's taking a lot of work. And if I'm going to do it, buddy, you can do it too, and I'm going to enforce it.
I cuss out the people who let him in too. I'm like, what are you doing, man? You're ruining society here.
It really is. Okay, so, yeah.
Right? This is the tragedy of the commons, right? There's only one lane.
Not only should you follow the rule, but you should enforce other people following the rule.
Right, yeah, now we're talking. Take all the side zoomers and...
It's a two-part thing. You can't just do it yourself. You have to enforce everyone else. Be like James. Don't let him in.
Don't let him in, man.
You're going to sit there in the middle lane, buddy. I don't care.
You're just making the line longer for everyone else. That's the problem.
You and your kid's going to get hit by a semi? Sorry. You shouldn't side zone.
I agree, man. I say take them all. Take all the side zoomers, and what state are we going to give them? Texas? Send them all to Texas. They can have a laissez-faire paradise.
Yeah, they can sit down there with Joe and all his freedoms.
If you are interested in nootropics, check out my website. Our line of cutting-edge products is available at our lowest prices of the year. 30% off your entire order with discount code SUMMER at MetamaxPerformance.com.
Shire Hemp Farms. We have a wide range of smokable CBD, hemp, and Delta 8 products. Everything is grown and produced right here in Kentucky. Please come check us out. Support small farmers and small businesses near you. ShireHempFarms.com. We sell fake weed.
Thank you guys for watching and listening. If you are enjoying the show, please subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments down below in the description and visit our homepage for all of our contact information to get a hold of us, or to follow us on Twitter or Facebook. Also, subscribe to our Reddit. And if you are an audio podcast listener, you can find us on Stitcher, iTunes, Podbean, Spotify, Alexa, everywhere. It's such a tragic situation because it didn't have to be like this, man. And if, like, this is one of those moments where, like, it doesn't feel good to say I told you so. It just feels awful, you know? Like, we were saying this shit in 2001 when it happened.
Yeah, everyone that wasn't a neocon was, at least had some trepidation about going in, and there were worries. Hey, this could be a Vietnam, you know, this was just...
Well, there was only one member of Congress who voted against the invasion.
Ron Paul.
Who?
Was it Ron Paul?
It wasn't Ron
Paul,
no.
Oh.
Representative Barbara Lee.
Gentleman from California is recognized for a minute and a half.
Thank you. I want to thank our ranking member and my friend for yielding. Mr. Speaker, members, I rise today really with a very heavy heart. One that is filled with sorrow for the families and the loved ones who were killed and injured this week. Only the most foolish and the most callous would not understand the grief that has really gripped our people and millions across the world. This unspeakable act on the United States has really forced me, however, to rely on my moral compass, my conscience, and my God for direction. September 11th changed the world. Our deepest fears now haunt us. Yet I am convinced that military action will not prevent further acts of international terrorism against the United States. This is a very complex and complicated matter.
Of course, she was right. Invasion is typically not the right answer, in my opinion.
Could you imagine that was September 14th, 3 days after? They're still pulling bodies out.
Yeah.
And she, hey, kudos to her. That takes, I think it's so important to understand, just kind of have a brief understanding of the history of the area, to really understand why what is happening today happened. So Afghanistan, along with a lot of other countries, you know, we talked about the same problem in Israel, the Palestinian area, the Israeli mandate. These were all drawn up post-World War I with the collapse of the Ottoman Empire. Borders were drawn by a number of different countries. The southern border was drawn by some British people. The northern border was kind of the edges of the Soviet Empire, was drawn by Stalin. And these lines were drawn without any regards to the ethnic identities of the local peoples living there. So you had like the Uzbeks and Pashtuns, the Tajiks, kind of all mixed in this area that they called Afghanistan. And these people just traditionally did not get along well. They didn't have to get along well because they had separate areas that they lived in. So
tribal regions.
They were tribal regions. They had border trade, but they didn't want to be. They never were this cohesive group. And they had fairly different ideologies. For the most part, there's a lot more influences from Soviet Union on the northern end later on. And so that's, oddly enough, that's why there was the Northern Alliance for us to ally with, because they were a lot more secular. The southern parts of the Pashtun people. So the Soviet invasion, Soviets wanted to go in, prop up a government that was in support of them, that was supported by the previous version of the Northern Alliance. They go in, they institute their own government, they prop up a more secular government that was vying for power there. They started instituting land reforms and social reforms that were not popular among many of the devoutly Muslim and tribal populations. The communist government was receiving support from the Soviet Union. Our invasion was mounted for different reasons initially, but eventually it would basically become the same reason that they were there. Just, we defeated the Taliban. We could have defeated the Taliban and knocked out Al-Qaeda fairly quickly. But that in short time we had different goals.
I wanted to cut in here at some point about the Communist Party of Afghanistan at the time, because I disagree with the characterization that we did what the Soviets did. It really wasn't the same situation. The Communist Party at the time was a secular organization led by this Dr. Najibullah. The party, the PDPA repeatedly asked, in fact, 13 times they asked the Soviet Union to come in. And the Soviet Union actually refused because they thought that it would make the situation worse, which, eventually it did. The reason they went in was there was infighting in the PDPA. President Mir Mohammad Taraki was assassinated by the prime minister and political rival Hazifullah Amin. They entered and killed Amin because they said he went way too far. And they were supporting the moderate elements of the party. And in addition, it's not fair to say it was like a proxy government because, the urban areas were fairly modern and secular at the time. And as you say, there was a big difference between the Pashtun regions and the cities. Afghanistan at the time was part of this hippie trail where hippies would go to Afghanistan and go on this big trek. It was pretty modern. It wasn't a rich area, but it was really modern at the time.
So I know, at a certain point, there's a famous photo of Bin Laden in Afghanistan as a young man in the 60s or 70s, and he's standing around wearing blue jeans.
I haven't seen that one.
It's kind of like these little cosmopolitan area, but so I think the point was that the government was a minority government. It was not, there wasn't really a government of the country.
In the cities, I don't think that's really true. I think overall maybe, but I think...
Yeah, maybe in the city and the northern areas that had more contact with... This is my reading of it.
Even the Pashtun regions weren't that fundamentalist at the time. The Madrasas in northern Pakistan and southern Afghanistan were funded by the United States to create these fundamentalists. I mean, they were rural farmers and whatnot, but the Madrasas were specifically funded by Pakistani intelligence in the United States to breed the Mujahideen. And a lot of the Mujahideen made up the Northern Alliance members also. It wasn't just the Taliban. They were and one of these guys in particular is pretty horrific, which we'll get into in a bit. But
I need to read more about it. See what about the PDPA made them more popular than the U.S.-backed government. And I guess, it wasn't a proxy government per se, but this is kind of what the Soviet Union did. It would go in and find friendly governments Cuba, for example. Cuba wasn't a proxy for the Soviet Union, but it was friendly, and they
but it's not like the Soviets went in and made Cuba. Cuba was a grassroots revolution.
Yeah, sure. But they capitalized on the popularity and power of a minority group in a country and went there, started funding them, giving them money in ways that same kind of way that we do it. You know, you have.
Well, that's Marxist-Leninism. You know, that's supposed to be a global movement. You know.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know about their.
Here's the Bin
reason.
Laden.
Anyway.
It's just a little more complicated than. There's the Bin Laden. This is the funding of the Mujahideen when that started.
Yeah.
This is from the Independent. Anti-Soviet warrior puts his army on the road to peace, and it's a picture of Bin Laden with a freaking turban on and shit, walking down the Afghanistan hippie trail.
Okay. Yeah. So Soviets controlled most of the country. They could not. Well, the native populations and the rural areas. The PDPA held authority in large cities, with rural areas being effectively ungovernable. In 1994, the Taliban, also during this period when the Mujahideen was started, so this would have been the 80s, when Mujahideen was started, importantly, there was two different Mujahideen fighters, one of which was named Osama bin Laden, the other was Mullah Omar, right?
He was the head of the Taliban for a long time.
Mullah Omar. Okay, so they met in the 80s. They'd known each other for a long time. In 1994, the Taliban arose in the Pashtun province, southern Afghanistan. This is more rural, more tribal Muslim area. Pashtun ethnic group is one of those divided by the British Durand line, with the other portion being in northern Pakistan. This is also how they were able to keep getting funding through from Pakistan. They'd be able to run across the border whenever U.S. attacks come in. In 96, the Taliban formed an Islamic emirate, a harsh theocratic regime rife with human rights abuse and strict interpretation of Sharia law. So, yeah, Bin Laden formed up. Sorry, go ahead.
The Soviets left in 1989, and the PDPA kept the government intact until 1992, even though the Mujahideen had massive support from Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and the United States. And it wasn't the PDPA at the time, it was the DRA was what they were called. And when the Taliban finally took over, they tortured, castrated, and hung Najibullah from a pole. And Najibullah was this reformist. He wasn't a hardline communist or anything like that. He was instituting a lot of reforms, actually. He distanced the government from socialism. In favor of Afghan nationalism. He abolished the one-party state. He let non-communists join the government. He remained open to dialogue with the Mujahideen and other groups. He made Islam the official religion of Afghanistan. He invited exiled businessmen back to retake their properties. In the 1990 Constitution, all references to communism were removed, and Islam became the state religion. Najibullah and the DRA built infrastructure, increased the standard of living, and after the Soviet Union fell, he lost all foreign aid. And this Abdul Rashid Datsam, he's a Northern Alliance guy that was basically the worst person ever. And he was sort of one of our guys in fighting the Taliban, obviously. He's a traitor, basically. He switched sides many times during the civil wars. He was a key U.S. ally in the U.S. invasion initially. And he's responsible for atrocities such as suffocating 1,000 Taliban prisoners in metal shipping containers while working for the United States. So pretty sick guy, man.
Yeah. And when I was kind of reading through this and even hearing you bring these things up, there's this consistent theme of how complicated the situation is there, and how how difficult it is to govern that many different people with that many different goals.
Sure.
In an area where if they don't want to be governed, they don't have to be governed. I'm sure probably some of these land reforms were popular. Making state religion Islam was popular, but
he was doing all this to pacify the Americans, I think, because he didn't want what happened happen.
But it just seems to be an essentially ungovernable area with people.
My point is always there were secular forces that we chose not to support. That's what I always come back to on these on U.S. foreign policy. It's always the same thing. Like we could have supported the secular forces, and we didn't. We supported the freaking funding on the Madrasas.
Well, I think the secular forces, at least during the Soviet invasion, were mostly allied with the Communist Party. Which
sure.
There were no secular, I'm sure there were, but predominantly there were no secular forces.
That's just ideology, though. That's just, my ideology doesn't line up with, the Soviet ideology, so as a result, the people of Afghanistan have to suffer? How's that fair?
I mean, this is the problem of global politics, I mean, I don't think the U.S. giving money to fund the Mujahideen was in any way an endorsement of the Mujahideen. It was strictly to make things more difficult for the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
I think the plight of Afghan people was probably never even brought up in these meetings.
Just how amoral is that situation? That
completely.
Decision?
It is completely amoral. Well, it's immoral when you're putting people's lives at risk like this. But, it's just global chess, global politics.
Man, God,
you don't care about the night when you move it.
This is so stupid, dude. They created this country out of thin air. Look at this map.
I like the little squiggly part at the top. Is it top right? Like this long, thin line.
Here's all the shitty mountainous territory. Something like 70% of Afghanistan is like unfarmable because it's all mountains. And it's all landlocked, obviously. Everything around it has access to the seas, but except for Afghanistan. It's like, well, we're just going to put all the poor people in this one country. What a terrible...
Yeah.
Who drew this map, dude?
And the fact that you have the mountains come through, you have this...
geographical separation.
This geographical separation where these people, they don't know each other, they don't care about each other, and you have the different ideologies really taking root and kind of growing in isolation without in contact with the neighboring the people that are their countrymen.
Right. I mean, the Pashtun territory is basically kind of on their own, like geographically as well,
Yeah. This is kind of a side point. This is something these things tend to come up. Well, we talked about it with the Israel-Palestine. These lines being drawn without regard to ethnic and religious lines. And on the face of it, my initial reaction is, well, yeah, why you put them together and, hopefully they can learn to work with one another, and you're not, by having different nationalities included within a certain country, geographic, legal location, you are lessening the diversification and the othering amongst these different groups.
Right.
But apparently these just tribalistic urges, they just go too deep. It's just, maybe I was high or something when I was thinking about this, but
it seems strange to us, like the ethnic differences in that region.
In the U.S., we're taught about, you hear about the U.S. being a melting pot.
Right.
You have this culture, that culture, they all kind of come together. For the most part, I think, compared to what some other countries are, we get along incredibly well. There's certainly tensions between this group and that group, but we get along pretty well on the whole. And so, yeah, my initial inclination is that put them together so that they can start getting along. So you don't have that further separation between the Pashtuns and the Tajiks, but it doesn't. I just wonder why it is that makes it
why can't
seemingly
we all just
impossible.
Get along, man?
Why can't, man?
So who are the Taliban? Taliban means students, because the Taliban fighters were taught in these madrasas that the U.S. and Pakistan funded in the Pashtun regions. The Taliban is guilty of many human rights abuses, so are the Northern Alliance and the U.S. The Taliban is popular in the country, particularly in the rural areas, because they crack down on corruption, which is a major problem. The Taliban charges taxes, but during the Civil War, extortion was rampant. There were no courts to settle disputes. The Taliban provide those courts, as well as civil security, so you don't just get robbed all the time by these people who are just setting up old-style bandit traps for people traveling or doing trade, and the Taliban cracks down on all that shit. So they do have a lot of popular support in the country, obviously.
Yeah, that's quite the conundrum. I mean, this is with these, essentially developing countries, very poor countries like this. You have that. What do you want? There's two ways we could do this. We can have it despotic, theocratic government, or we can have just rampant banditry and.
Well, have you seen? I guess you haven't been watching the news, but the Taliban have this like spokesperson that speaks pretty good English.
Oh, I have seen that. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure.
And he's talking about how women are going to have rights under Sharia.
Yeah.
And I tweeted out, well, put it to a referendum. Put Sharia law to a referendum, and then the world will take us seriously. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Let every adult vote on if they want this shit or not, because otherwise nobody cares what you say.
Yeah, I'm sure Trump will probably be bringing his Miss America pageant over there. I'm sure. A bunch of bikini-clad women walking around with an orange man.
Fundamentalism exists a lot of places in the world. In particular, even in countries that we support, like Saudi Arabia, it's a fairly similar situation. So I think
particularly
in
Saudi Arabia,
pretty hypocritical to sort of point out the one country and shame them for it. Although it is horrific to see what they do, but it's also horrific what the Saudi Arabian dictatorship does.
Yeah, I think we would. I guess what Saudi Arabia has going for it is that there is one overwhelmingly powerful faction there. That's I believe it's the Sunnis, and they don't really have any other ethnic groups to deal with to be like that towards. So you behead a couple of your people in public from time to time, and other than that, everybody kind of follows the rule. You don't. Yeah. No, Saudi Arabia is it's one of the most disgusting examples, and it's not just that they're doing it; it's that we support them doing it.
Yeah, I think that makes it worse.
It's the worst part. That makes it way worse because now, I mean, you and I hold.
Look at what Israel does. Look at what Israel does. Just because they're not Muslim, they're just as bad, dude.
I don't think they're just as bad. I think they're bad, and I think it makes it.
Historically, they've done just as bad shit. I would say if you've seen like the torture. Interrogation, all that stuff, man. Maybe these days they're not as bad as they used to be, but historically they did some horrible shit, man.
Oh, I'm sure they did. I know that they did some terrible stuff. Okay, so where did we leave off?
Do you want to go over the opportunities, like the negotiations, such as they were?
Yeah, we can. Okay, so you want to start with Missy bombings? I think that's kind of where it all begins.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, you have that, right?
Yeah. Okay, so I think there was some in the earlier 90s too, but 1998 there was Al-Qaeda bombed 2 U.S. embassies in Africa and sent a bomb to the USS Cole, which is a warship that we had in the Gulf of Aden, I believe.
Right.
So he was operating out of Afghanistan predominantly, not entirely. He was moving to a couple
Pakistan. Well, yeah, he was in tight with Pakistani intelligence and whatnot.
Yeah, the Pakistani intelligence. I believe there's in other countries, maybe Sudan in Africa, that he was operating out of. But so at that time, the UN imposed sanctions against the Taliban for harboring Al-Qaeda and. Yeah, okay. So at the time, bin Laden come out and he took responsibility. Said, "Yeah, this is a fight against U.S. imperialism." So 1998, United States embassy bombings were attacked on August 7th. More than 200 people were killed in nearly simultaneous truck bomb explosions in Tanzania, and the other was in Kenya,
Nairobi. Yeah.
Okay, so at the time, the UN imposed sanctions on the Taliban government for harboring him and harboring Al-Qaeda in general. 2001, 9/11 comes along, and September 11th happens. Initially, bin Laden, I believe that he denied culpability with it.
Yeah, he did.
He wasn't silent about it. He didn't not say anything. He specifically said he didn't. Okay, although he denied the attacks at first. Okay, this is 2004 is when he put out one of his infamous. You remember the bin Laden videos we'd get every once in a while?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he put out a videotape where he finally took responsibility for it.
It seemed like it had to have been him, but,
Yeah, I think
or at least
seemed like there was
members of his organization, at least. Let's put it that way.
Members of his. Yeah, he could have been lying. He could have taken responsibility. 3 years had passed. He seen nothing. Didn't think anything was gonna happen, and wanted to get the notoriety. But he was okay. So that happens.
This is before 9/11. That the Taliban offered to give bin Laden to Bush on his first day in office. This came to light fairly recently, I think. Mohabbat went to Kandahar and communicated the news of imminent bombing to the Taliban. They asked him to set up a meeting with U.S. officials to arrange the circumstances of their handover of Osama. On November 2nd, 2000, less than a week before the U.S. election, Mohabbat arranged a face-to-face meeting in that same Sheraton Hotel in Frankfurt between Taliban leaders and a U.S. government team. After a rocky start on the first day of the Frankfurt session, Mohabbat says the Taliban realized the gravity of U.S. threats and outlined various ways bin Laden could be dealt with. He could be turned over to the EU, he could be killed by the Taliban, or made available as a target for cruise missiles. In the end, Mohabbat says, the Taliban promised the unconditional surrender of bin Laden. We all agreed, Mohabbat tells Counterpunch, the best way was to gather Osama and all his lieutenants in one location, and the U.S. would send 1 or 2 cruise missiles. This is before 9/11. The U.S. had this information, and the Taliban offered to turn him over.
Yeah. Well, the deal fell through because of 9/11. So this was, the months leading up to 9/11. Bush had just taken office. Clinton had bombed areas of Afghanistan after the 1998 embassy bombings. He was on the U.S. shit list. I guess my understanding was it was a priority of the Bush administration to pursue these types of people. So talks were kind of in the works as Bush had taken his first year of office. And then the bombings, the hijackings take place, 9/11. And apparently all this fell through because this is when Bush comes out. He makes a statement to the Taliban saying, you have to immediately give over or give us access to bin Laden or we will going to invade.
Right.
And Mullah Omar said, no, we want you to produce evidence.
Right.
And that's where, Bush had drawn his red line. He said, I guess essentially, we're not going to play games. I'm not doing this. You let us in. We know who it is. Bush saying this. We know who it is. So we either get in or, we're not going to spend months arguing with you about it.
Right. True. Of course, we know now that, the Taliban there were several negotiation attempts after the invasion started. You're right. Initially, they did refuse to turn him over, but,
Well, and more specifically, so this is another point kind of in the big realm of or the overall theme of what we're talking about. Because of the fact that Afghanistan is ungovernable, and this is just speculation on my part, but you could easily have multiple sections of the Taliban, each making contradictory claims and each making their own promises. I could easily imagine a scenario in which there were certain high Taliban leaders that were perfectly fine with giving over bin Laden to the U.S. or setting up a scenario where you could take it. And then at the same time, the leader of, Mullah Omar being, wholeheartedly against it. And once this is another one of those complicating factors. And then who do you even listen to? It's another one of these complicating factors that just makes everything such a mess and so hard to deal with and so hard to parse.
I just don't see how that line of reasoning leads to the conclusion that we should invade and bomb a country leading to 7,000 civilian deaths. It just doesn't seem, even given that, it just seems like maybe you should pursue negotiations first.
So this would kind of come down to how much the negotiations had been going on prior to this, after the embassy bombings, because we had been negotiating since the embassy bombing. We'd even bombed a couple times in the tribal regions against these Al Qaeda bases. So, I don't know what I imagine it would not be low on the list of things that they would have been really pursuing trying to get the Taliban to hand these people over. It was known at the time that they bombed, and
sure. Well, don't say they. We knew that the Taliban wasn't behind it because they had offered to turn him over before the invasion. That's part of it. It's like the Taliban's getting the blame here, and it wasn't their fucking fault, really. Not directly, at least. You could say they harbored him, but, Pakistani intelligence runs the Pashtun regions, not fucking Taliban. That's the Northern Alliance.
So, if they don't run it, then just say, hey, go in, you'll have to fight your buddies Pakistan.
Well, Bush made his 2 offers. He had a second chance for them to turn over bin Laden, and the day after, the Taliban made an offer to negotiate to turn him over. And Bush flatly refused. It just seems like a situation where Bush wanted retribution. He didn't want a peaceful solution.
Yeah. So I think that's another one of the big factors in this is that Bush was he'd been in office for a year at this point, and
surrounded by Rumsfeld and Cheney,
surrounded by neocon warhawks, Wolfowitz, the other ones. Wolfowitz had the beard or the mustache. And the U.S. wanted blood, and we wanted retribution. They played the videos of those planes hitting those buildings over and over. I distinctly remember this. I'm sure you do too. I remember seeing you right after first period, and I went over and talked to you about it. I don't know if you remember. You probably don't remember that.
It's a good memory, dude.
Yeah. So the plane hit at the end of first period. The second plane hit during the break between first period and second period. I remember talking to you about it. It doesn't matter. First stuff. But
I just had this. I had this feeling in my stomach, like this is going to be a war.
Yeah.
I'm sure the U.S. has done some horrible shit to these people, or they wouldn't be acting this way. Is my first thought, because I had been reading a lot about U.S. foreign policy over the last 100 years or so. At that time, it just seemed. I just had a bad feeling that a lot of people were going to die as a result.
Yeah, and you were not wrong. A lot of people certainly did. We spent a lot of what they call it, blood and treasure. Lots of blood and treasure went
after
to
the second
this war.
After the second, I guess the first offer the Taliban made to negotiate, they actually offered to surrender. This is an article by The Intercept. The U.S. rebuffed them. Now here we are. Shortly after the U.S. invaded Afghanistan, the Taliban tried to surrender. For centuries in Afghanistan, when a rival force had come to power, the defeated one would put down their weapons and be integrated into the new power structure, obviously with much less power or none at all. This is a piece by Ryan Grimm here, who's a great journalist. This isn't a football game where the teams go to different cities when it's over. That may be hard for us to remember because the U.S. hasn't fought a protracted war on its own soil since the Civil War. So when the Taliban came to surrender, the U.S. turned them down repeatedly in a series of arrogant blunders spelled out in Anand Gopal's investigative treatment of the Afghanistan war. No good men among the living. Only full annihilation was good enough for the Bush administration.
So what do you feel? How would you have pursued this? You're Bush. You're reading the book, My Pet Goat. Is what he's reading to the school kids when the first plane hits. The whole country is pissed off, and we're ready to go to war. I mean, I know you remember the sentiment at that time. People were literally up in arms. And you find out that it's this terrorist organization that has previously bombed us, that's living in this essentially lawless country, and they're being harbored or not being, or let's say maybe they just weren't being pursued by the government in charge that had kind of just nominal control over the country.
I don't know. First of all, I don't know if the Taliban could have done anything about him if they wanted to, really,
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, I mean, they may have not even had the, it's more than likely that they didn't have the possibility.
My first thought, I think George Bush's first thought was, I can use this to get reelected. That was his first thought, which is exactly what he did, right?
Yeah.
You know how many fucking American flags were being waved?
Dude.
You can't have a referendum on the president during war times. That never happens. There's some crazy statistic like that, like presidents in a war they always get reelected or something.
Yeah, so that was actually true up until the modern period where wars were endless. Back when wars had ends,
right?
That was an absolutely true thing. That presidents were always reelected if they were during wartime.
One of the things I wanted to talk about was this deal that Trump made, dude. He made it toward the end of his term for the Taliban not to attack the U.S. forces until after the election. In return, the U.S. would withdraw, supposedly. I doubt Trump would have actually went through with it, but you know, Biden actually went through with it. That's why Obama didn't withdraw, because he would have lost re-election, right? That's why we have these endless wars. Part of the reason.
Yeah, everybody's afraid to be the guy that pulls out, and you know, obviously you and I are not privy to the conversations happening at the highest levels with people that are really aware of the situation on the ground. But I imagine people had known that this was just, well, we know, because I mean, a lot of people were saying this. We knew at the time, we just didn't know how right they were going to be. That this is just an ungovernable region. As many reforms as we put into place and let kids, girls go to school. And
when Trump made this deal, intelligence officials knew, and this is public now, that the Taliban was really, as soon as we withdrew, the Taliban was going to take over, because the government had the government we instituted had no authority, like really whatsoever. They just stole all the money, and we spent something like 10 times more on the actual war than we did on Reconstruction. And
bombs are expensive.
Yeah,
but
good thing U.S. taxpayers pay for those.
Yeah, you and I paid for them. Incidentally, of the conservatives that are wanting to push to get back into this war, just think about the irony of you being upset that we give $1 billion to Kenya for foreign aid, but you're willing to spend hundreds of billions essentially doing the same thing, just in a much, much worse way. But the idea being that we're going to prop up this government so these people can have a better life.
It's such bullshit, dude. We're just trying to make the country safe for U.S. investment. That's all we do around the world. We're out of time. Let me finish up with this. And lastly, this is from yesterday, I think. Okay, this is from the 19th. But the U.S. has got intelligence reports that ISIS is trying to attack the Kabul airport specifically. And I guess there is a serious threat there. So be on the lookout for that. So ISIS is in Afghanistan now.
Christ.
What a shit show, dude.
Yeah.
That's going to do it for me.
Yeah, this is
all I got.
A good one. Maybe we can pick up, talk about the refugee crisis and talk about we probably touch on this a little bit more, but thanks for watching, everybody. MetaMaxPerformance.com, all your nootropics.